What is going on? Welcome inside the Red Mile Rundown. I am your host, as always, Johnny Stope. Proud to be with you again here on an episode of the Red Mile Rundown, episode 93. And beside me, as always, Mr. Big Time, Robert Munich of FlamesNation.ca. How are you, Robert?
Good, man. Yeah, we got 51 days before the Flames season starts, and we got some sports radio, Calgary sports radio rumors out there, which is kind of exciting. So yeah, that's some fun times here.
Who is the sicko at Flames Nation that used Roman Horak as the countdown player of the day?
That might have been me.
What a pull, Roman Horak as your 51 days to the season kickoff. Just saw that today, and I had no reply for it. I just shook my head and just kept scrolling because that's quite the trip down memory lane there.
It was either Roman Horak or Troy Stetcher, so it was one of the two. I thought it'd be fun to throw back to Roman Horak, who had 30 really good games, and everyone thought that, oh my god, we might have a young center. We got Horak, we got Barchi, holy crap, the Flames are young and they're talented, but yeah, didn't necessarily work out in the end.
Player development in the early 2000s. Good times. You mentioned it off the top here, so we're going to go down this rabbit hole here of the Flames possible, or kind of Flames, Calgary possible sports media, sports talk. Something's coming. Eric Francis on Twitter just put up the overused eyes emoji with exciting news for Flame fans about to be announced regarding the Calgary sports radio landscape. And then you noted on Twitter today, a lot of people noted on Twitter today, Mr. Mike Richards threw some things out there that he might be back on airwaves sooner than later. What do you make of all this news, these tweets here, Robert? Sounds like something exciting is coming down the pipeline for Calgary and area via the radio.
Well, so now this is interesting. Literally, as we're recording here, so earlier today, I put out a tweet, and it was a video of Mike Richards, the former morning show host on 960 back in the 2000s. He was on the Rod Peterson show today saying that he's going to be on Calgary airwaves starting on September 5th. So there's that news where it sounds like something is happening in Calgary sports radio, and it's going to involve Mike Richards. But then literally 2 minutes ago, since we started recording this, and I said that Mike Richards announcing that he's going to be back on the airwaves, I would assume that this has something to do with what Eric Francis tweeted when he said that there's going to be some exciting news for Calgary sports radio fans. And then Eric Francis just commented on my tweet saying, not at all.
Ooh.
So now there's a Mike Richards angle, and now there's the whatever Eric Francis is tweeting about. They're two completely separate things. So now there might be two big pieces of news when it comes to sports radio in this town. My guess now, based off of what Eric just tweeted, I'm going to say Mike Richards. I think he's got some pretty decent connections in Calgary in terms of people with money. So he might be starting his own thing, and it might be digital. It might be on AM or FM. I don't know. So sounds like there's that. And then what Eric Francis was referring to, my guess would be some sort of rights deal between the Calgary Flames and a station. I'm going to guess it'd be the 770 just because they have a partnership with CSEC already with the Calgary Stampeders. Chorus Entertainment, who owns 770, they have the radio rights to the Edmonton Oilers and Winnipeg Jets. So they're already in the hockey broadcasting business. Mm-hmm. So I think there's synergies there. So yeah, that's actually super interesting. Yeah, we got some news here to talk about. But yeah, so that's kind of my theory. Do you have any theories on what this could potentially be?
That Mike Richards thing has me thinking now. What could he possibly be up to, and where possibly could he be going? Got to stay tuned to that one for sure. The Flames or the Calgary Sports Talk Radio on 770 makes a ton of sense for me. I mentioned it back in the day when the radio station was first off, and where would Flames games be? That was something that I would possibly look at because of all the connections you just made there, Robert. So for me, that'd be my guess as well. I don't have an alternative theory for anybody out there. I'm not connected in that grouping, but it just makes sense that CSEC already has that relationship there. 77 is a great station. It does the Stampeders games. They do a great job in it. They do the post and the pregame show, which is nice for the Stampeders. It's a great broadcast. And so they know what they're doing over there. And I think that makes a ton of sense. Is that radio station looking for a little bit of a spark as well? What's going on in that station? Are they looking for extra content as well? Could it be a sports talk on there as well as the Flames games type of thing? Some extra hours for these sports talk nuts like you or I or some of our awesome listeners. So that would be my guess. Is 770 would be part of it because of the connections we have there. But it's exciting that something is coming. You probably have Pat Steinberg attached to it. Eric Francis is exciting. Is always in the know. He knows what it is, so he'll probably have something to do with it. Could other people from the Fan 960 be part of this thing? So something cool is coming to Calgary. We just don't know what it is yet, Robert, and it's exciting for hockey fans and sports fans in the city.
Yeah, and like if the thing Francis was tweeting about, if that is the Flames' rights going to CHQR, I don't think they would move to an all sports talk station. I think that they would probably do maybe like an hour-long Flame show. Like they already have sports talk with Jock on their airwaves already, so maybe they would kind of move that to a different time slot, make it more Flame specific, and then do a 30-minute to an hour pregame show, broadcast the games, do a post-game show, but don't go like completely 100% into sports, because they do have something good going on with a lot of their political talk shows. Actually, they're pretty interesting. So that'd be kind of my guess. If Francis referring to the radio rights, yeah, I would say probably CHQR and Chorus, and then the Mike Richards thing now is interesting. Is that I know he kind of went on the digital side of things for a while there. He was doing his own show on YouTube and on podcasts, and then he went to the Fan 960. I think his show was every weekend. So yeah, could he be doing digital? Could he be back in the radio game, starting his own thing? That's going to be really interesting to see. So there's going to be a couple sports media announcements here in the city of Calgary, which is exciting, because it was going in an ugly direction there for a while, just with everything shutting down, the lack of reporters. Mm-hmm. So to have potentially a couple positive announcements here is good news for Flames fans.
Yeah, turn on those notifications and hit that bell on your phone so you get that right to your phone when that announcement comes out. It'd be interesting to see how that shapes out for the city of Calgary. But very, very exciting times for sports fans in the city, and it's awesome. It's absolutely awesome. And I know that they're going to get supported no matter what they do, because there is a lot of hungry sports fans out there for the Calgary area. Awesome. Let's dive into the Flames here, Robert. It is August. There's not a lot to chat about, but we are getting closer to training camps. We are getting closer to the day where we start hearing people come back to the city, and the golf tournament's right around the corner for the Flames. So might as well start talking about next season and looking a little bit ahead to what we might see from the Flames. And no better way to start to kind of define what we think a successful season for this team will be. What do we think and what do we expect from the Flames, from the top down to the newest players to the old veterans? What are we looking at for this Flames team? And kicking it off here, I'll get us started here, Robert. And I'm going to take the lowest hanging fruit I could possibly find for the Flames' successful season. It's all about the kids and about taking a step forward with the younger players on this roster. For me, this season is more about making sure that the Zane Parek's and the Matvei Griddens have the opportunities to build on their skill, build on last season, do what they need to do to get to the next steps of their career, have power play time, have some penalty kill time, depending who you are, get into the groove of the National Hockey League and be ready to take the next step of your career. So for me, the easiest and the lowest hanging fruit of what success is this year for the Flames isn't about the scoreline, isn't about the wins-loss column for me. It's about the kids and about getting them developed and to the next step of their NHL careers, Robert. Where would you start in talking about a successful season for the Flames?
Yeah, I would start right there with you, and it's just 100% about the development of young players this upcoming season. That is by far and away the most important thing that I think the Calgary Flames can get out of this, because we all know that they're not going to make the playoffs this year. It would take a miracle for them to get into the playoffs. So because you're not going to be pushing for that, you have to prioritize the development of young players. And I think there's 5 guys on the current roster that Ryan Huska and the coaching staff really need to make sure that they take the next step in their careers. And it's Simo Nemec, Zane Perek, Matt Gridden, Matt Coronado, and Sam Honzik. I think those are kind of the 5 guys who are on the roster right now who, and I'm just talking about forwards and defensemen, I'm talking about Dustin Wolf. But those are the guys who I think could be part of the core moving forward. And I think it's really important that Huska gives them a defined role, gives them adequate ice time, and puts them in positions to succeed and try to get them to become the best players they possibly can, because those 5 guys moving forward are going to be really important. And then, at the end of the season, there's going to be Cole Reschny, Ethan Wittenbach, Carson Karls, potentially Cullen Potter. He's got to make sure he gets those guys in the lineup too. So yeah, I think you're absolutely bang on with your first one there. And just to add to like the young players, the other thing I'd like to see too is more Calgary Wranglers get an opportunity. I found last year that, sometimes when the guys got called up, whether it was Rory Cairns or William Stromgren, they didn't get the longest leash and they didn't get put necessarily in the best positions to succeed and take advantage of their skill sets. So I look at William Stromgren, Brendan Othman, Idar Suniev, Tyson Gross, Sam Morton, Jonathan Castagna, those types of players. I'd love to see them get a legit shot in the NHL to show what they can do and not just play 2 games averaging 7 minutes a night and, not being put on the power play or penalty kill or, whatever positions these players need to be in to be successful. So the other thing I would add on top of that is just let's see some more Wranglers next year for extended periods of time.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I want to jump back real quick here to what you were talking about, those 5 players that a lot of people are talking about. Hey, how exciting Carroll is going to be, in Reschny and Wittenbach. We can't forget the guys that are already here, the young players that are already here, the Ristaviches, the Pereks, the Honziks, those guys, the Griddens. Those guys are going to be so vitally important to this rebuild as well for the Flames. We can't forget about developing these guys as well as being excited about these prospects. So I'm glad you brought that up on the podcast here as well, Robert. That's very important for me. And I hope that these guys, like you mentioned, the Royer Cairns and Stromgrens and those players, they do get honest looks. We don't need to see Siplikov and Pospisil go out there every single game and be so-so NHLers. Put a couple of AHLers in there, see what they can give you, what they can provide you. You need to kind of know what you have in these guys, because it's kind of do or die time for a guy like a William Stromgren or a Rory Cairns. Are you or are you not an NHLer and a Calgary Flame for the future here? Because our job's up for grabs here. If you look at the cap room and the roster breakdown over the course of the next few seasons, there's going to be a lot of openings coming up with Frost's contract expiring and Backlund's contract in a couple of years is going to expire, and so on and so no Strome. So there's going to be jobs available for these guys if they can prove that they are NHLers at this level. And this takes me right to my second point here. It's on Ryan Huska to show that he can kind of adapt his coaching to the roster that he's been given here. People made the excuse for a couple last seasons, like, well, he has to play that defensive style because look at the roster that he has. Well, you got to use that same logic here. You have to start playing these kids based on the roster that you have in front of you here. You have to put these guys in positions to succeed. So for me, and a successful season for the Flames is not only these players taking the next step, but a young coach in Ryan Huska has to show that he's adaptable as well. And play these kids in the proper situations. You mentioned the word, give them their role, Robert, and I fully agree with that as well. Put these people in position to succeed, define their role, and help them develop the next step. So for me, my point number 2 is Ryan Huska has to take a step as well as these kids.
Couldn't agree more. We talked about it last week. I mean, I think we both agree that this is just a massive year for Ryan Huska. Absolutely huge for his career. So yeah, I totally agree with that. Mm-hmm. The other one, I mean, this might be kind of pointing out the obvious here, but from just an overall totality of the season, I do think it's important that they finish as close to the bottom of the standings as humanly possible. And, just based off the roster that they have right now and the fact that they're going to start next year without Blake Coleman, without Rasmus Anderson, Mackenzie Weegar, Nazem Kadri, Like this is not a very good team on paper, and I do think that there's a legit chance that they're going to finish 32nd in the league. I think the only thing that could really get in the way of that is probably Dustin Wolf and Devin Cooley, like we saw last year. I mean, if it wasn't for those two guys, the Flames, they would have been right there at the Vancouver Canucks. I really believe that. I think the team, they're dead last in goals. They were not a very good defensive team. Those goalies, held them above water a little bit. So, yeah, I would say the other key to success for me is finish as close to the bottom of the standings as possible. Try to guarantee yourself a top 3 pick in this draft. There's some really good players available, including some potential number 1 centers in the future.
Mm-hmm.
So this is not the year to go out and be, more competitive than your roster would indicate, like they were in 24-25. This is not the year to try and push to finish 20th in the league. This is the year for the Calgary Flames to finish dead last. And, quite honestly, I know a lot of people think the Vancouver Canucks are the worst team in the NHL on paper. I think the Flames are right there with them. I really do. So, let's see them finish as close to the bottom of the standings as possible.
Yeah, let's hope that they boat race the Vancouver Canucks to 32nd so you can stay there the longest. Make it a competition of how many days can you be in 32nd in the National Hockey League. And Robert and I are not on here clamoring for losses. That's not what we're on here, and have a losing culture. We're on here trying to say that it's so vitally important to stick to the plan and use this roster. It's not a good roster. It's going to inevitably be at the bottom of the NHL, but use it to your advantage to put yourself in a situation where, hey, we don't need to win these games. We need to show that these players can play in these situations, in these games. And naturally, the results aren't going to be great for the Flames. And so it's not advocating to just go 0-84. It's advocating for, hey, play the kids in the right spots and the results will take care of themselves. And you'll put yourself in this position to add to this prospect pool that you so desperately need. People are so upset about not getting a center this last draft at the top of the draft and not drafting, Vigo Bork. Well, you have an opportunity to draft someone probably even better than Vigo in this next draft if you put yourself in a position to do so. I love that point by you, Robert. It is the obvious statement, but it needs to be said. 32nd, 30th, maybe 31st, sure. Get yourself in the 30s there and put yourself in a spot to have your choice of one of those top centers coming out in the 2027 draft. Vitally important for the Flames and for the growth and for this rebuild for them to stick with the plan. Anything else from you that you would deem to make this season a success for the Flames? We made it very basic here, and I think it is very basic. Get those kids to go to the next level, finish where you need to finish for the draft, Robert. Anything else strike you that needs to happen for the Flames to be a successful season for them? And does winning matter?
The only thing the only other thing that I would add to the list, it's more of an off ice thing, and it's just the idea that Craig Conroy continues to, put forth good asset management, make sure that he continues to stockpile draft picks. I mean, I think there's at least a few deals that he can make this year to continue to stockpile draft picks that, like, I think draft picks are the most important currency for a rebuilding team because, I mean, you could use them in the draft, which is fantastic, and the Flames have been drafting really well lately. Mm-hmm. Or you can use them in a trade like they did with Simon Nemec, where they can get a high-end 22-year-old defenseman that is going to be part of your team for a long time, hopefully. So, just continue to add those picks. And, you look at like guys like Connor Zary or Yegor Sharangovich, and then you have your pending UFAs and Morgan Frost, Ryan Strome, Maxim Siplikov, Joel Hanley, Braid Bahal. Essentially, like out of that group, just get what you can for those guys, unless you're going to want to re-sign Morgan Frost, but get what you can for them. And then you have all these players whose contracts are up in 2028. And it's guys like Joel Farabee, Michael Backlund, Zach Whitecloud, Devin Cooley. If you want to move a couple of those guys, I mean, you might be able to get more for them this year because the acquiring team is going to get them for multiple playoff runs. Maybe you explore a couple trades for those guys. I'm looking at Whitecloud, and this one sucks because I'm just such a big fan of the player and the person. But if Hunter Brzustevich shows that he's an NHL player and that he has to play, Whitecloud is clearly the guy that would need to go. So like I wonder if we're going to see him move out of Calgary potentially within the next 6 or 7 months here. So that'd be the only other thing I'd add to the discussion is just continue to make trades and continue to get those draft picks.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Be proactive, continue to take advantage of the opportunity in front of you to build this roster the correct way, the right way. Stick to the plan. I like that from you, Robert. That is a good pull and a very poignant point by you as well. The Flames roster is chocked full of these kids as well, Robert. We talk about them ad nauseum and we love them. We love these guys. But in order for these guys to take a step ahead, one or two guys are going to have a breakout season for the Flames, and they're going to have to take a step forward in their production and what they do on the ice. So we're going to take a time here to pick a couple of guys out and kind of chit-chat about what we think their season could be potentially ahead for them this year to help them progress and help the Calgary Flames here. So start out with our breakout guy, Rob. Who's first on your list as Flame breakout candidates this 2026-27 season?
So yeah, I'll start with Simon Nemec. I'm really high on him, and just the more I read about him and the more you watch and the more you listen like podcasts and read articles and all that kind of stuff, the more you learn about the guy, the more excited I am to see what he can do as a Calgary Flame. And heading into this year, I genuinely think that he is their number one defenseman. And in New Jersey, he was a third pair guy. He was essentially their number 5 or number 6. So he's going to get a huge opportunity to show what kind of player he is and show that he can break out and be the number 1 or a top pairing defenseman in the NHL. Him and Kevin Ball in a pairing, playing, first pair minutes of 5-on-5. Craig Conroy was saying that he wants to see Nemec on the PK. I could also see Nemec quarterbacking the second power play unit with Zane Parekh quarterbacking the first. So when you take all that into consideration, way more ice time, better defensive partner beside him, power play time, and then he'll probably be first over the boards in 3-on-3 as well. Like you combine all those things together, and I think we could be on the verge of seeing a guy break out and have an incredible season. And I always go back to the Olympics. We've mentioned the Olympics with Nemec a bunch of times on this podcast, but I think it's for good reason, because on Team Slovakia, he was by far the number 1 defenseman on that team. He might have been, him and Slafkovsky are the 2 best players in Slovakia right now. And when he got that opportunity to play those number 1 minutes at the Olympics, he was one of the best players in that entire tournament. And I just wonder if we're going to see something similar in the NHL this season. Once again, it's going to come down to Ryan Huska to give him those minutes. But if he does get those minutes, I think we're going to see a guy break out and have a massive year. So yeah, Simon Nemec is my number 1 guy.
I like that one a lot. It seemed the more minutes he got at the Olympics, the better he played as well. So it'd be very on Ryan Huska here to give him those minutes and to see what he is at the NHL level. They're paying him like he's the number 1 guy on this team now. So play him like he's the number 1 guy on this team. I think he's posed for a great season. I'm a big fan of him. Big fan of why New Jersey took him second overall when they did, and I'm a big fan that he's now on the Flames. I'm excited to see what he brings. My first breakout candidate, and it's kind of weird to say because he played 37 games last year for the Flames, and he was really good in most of those games. In all those games, he was a guy who you and I would call the best offensive threat down the stretch for the Flames. Matvei Gridin showed a lot last year for the Flames. His 20 points in 37 games is pretty good for a rookie. His plus minus is something to be desired, but you don't pay him to be a defensive stalwart. But he's poised here to be a guy on your power play 1, play in your top 6, potentially your top line here. And a guy who can drive, who seemingly was the only guy who was able to drive a line last year for the Flames, especially down the stretch post-Olympic break. I think Matvei is in for another step forward, and I think the sky is the limit for this guy, a prospect that a lot of people were sleeping on when he was picked by the Flames a few seasons ago at number 28 overall. People gloss over that pick there, but I think he's showing that he is everything and more that you would hope for when you pick a player in that area of the NHL draft. So for me, Matvei Gridin is posed to get all the opportunity in the world to be a top line player, top power play player, and I think he excels at it, and I think he could be the guy who leads the team in scoring, and that's a lot. It's a lot of praise for a guy in his second season with only 37 games under his belt. But I think he's good for it, and the potential for him to be that and maybe a little bit more is definitely there for me, Robert.
I completely agree, and I'm right there with you. Let's call it from the trade deadline to the end of the year. I genuinely thought that he was the Flames' best forward and arguably their best player. Maybe outside the goalies, and it was just that mix of the high end passing, like some of the passes he'd make, nobody else on this team makes, and like not even Jonathan Huberdeau. Just he'll find a guy through 2 or 3 sticks. There'll be a bunch of bodies in the way, there'll be skates in the way, but he's still somehow able to make those passes. And I just think it's super impressive. And then the shot speaks for itself. Some of the goals he scored last year were just absolutely gorgeous shots. So, and he said at the end of the season in his year-end meeting with Ryan Huska that he's going to lead the team in scoring next year, and I think he is too. Whether that's 55 or 60 points, I think he'll be right in that range, and it'll probably be enough to lead this team in scoring next year. So yeah, I think that's a really good one. My second one will be this one because he's already had a couple good years in the NHL. I think people might kind of think that this not necessarily a breakout candidate, but I really think Matt Coronado is going to have a really big year next year, and mainly because I really like the way he finished. We'll say February till the end of the season. I thought he was really good. I thought he finally found a role. Whether in the top 6, he had an offensive role on the wing, played on the power play, was playing in 3-on-3. Ryan Huska finally started to trust him, and I think there were 2 things that stood out for me last year, and reasons why I don't think he put up the points that he should have. One was the first 2 to 3 months of the year. It really felt like he didn't have a spot in the lineup. Ryan Huska didn't quite trust him. He was kind of all over the map. At one point he was a healthy scratch. It was a really strange way to start the season for Coronado. I don't think he was ever able to find his footing. I don't think that's going to happen next year. I think he's coming into training camp with an established spot as the top right winger on this team. And my guess is that he would start on a line with Matt Bay-Gritton and Morgan Frost. And I think those 3 could be really good together. And then the other reason, I don't think he put up the points he did last year was because I just think it was one of those situations where it was just bad luck. He just didn't have that finish. He's hitting a bunch of posts. He was getting robbed by goalies. I really believe that those types of seasons happen to goal scorers, once every 4 or 5 years. I think that was the year it happened for him. And I really believe he's going to come into next year and break out and have his best year as a Calgary Flame, score at least 20. I could see him scoring 25 to 30 goals next year and just being a really important player on this team. So yeah, Matt Coronado is my second breakout candidate.
I know people are going to scoff at that, but I like it because he's a guy that needs to be more consistent for the Flames and to be a guy who helps drive this lineup. He's a guy who's going to be counted on to score goals. And he was shooting last year. He shot 197 times last year. So he's putting that puck on the net. If you can just get some of that luck to go his way, like he's not going to shoot 9% over the course of his entire NHL career. If he does, it's gonna suck for Matt. But I have faith that he's gonna take a little bit step forward here, and he's gonna be getting a lot more minutes next year and be counted on to be a guy to drive that top line with Matt Bay-Gritton and Morgan Frost. He's gonna be a guy counted on again, probably on power play 1. There's opportunities for him to be a consistent player, and if he can find that consistency and get some of those bounces to go his way. And the only way to do that is to continue sticking on your game, continually playing, continually putting those pucks on net. I think he can break through here. So I get what you're saying there, Robert. And if anyone has a problem with Robert saying that he's going to be a breakout candidate, just think about it a little bit because he's poised to be a breakout candidate in the sense of being a nice, consistent NHL player and someone that Curry Conray and Ryan Huska can lean on to lead this team going forward. I like that call by you, Robert. That's a good one. My second guy is a guy who looked like he might have started breaking out last year, and that darn injury bug found him again. But I think Sam Honzek is poised to take the next step. We saw flashes of it last year alongside of Backlund and Coleman. We saw his game settle in, kind of found a role there for himself. And if he can kind of capture that magic again, I think he's poised to have an outstanding season. It will obviously be his best professional season. if he can stay healthy. So you just stay healthy and consistent. I think Sam Honzik is poised to maybe take over some of the role that Blake Coleman had for the Flames when he was here in Calgary. And I think playing him alongside of Michael Backlund can help refine his game to be that style of player. I think that he's poised here to do it. That injury thing is going to continually come up until it's no longer a thing. So he's got to stay healthy and he's got to stay prepared to play in these games. But if he does, I think, Robert, we're going to see what we saw last year. Just a step forward, a better consistent hockey player, and someone that can be relied on alongside Michael Backlund.
Yeah, and you said it. It's all just going to come down to staying healthy. That's the biggest key for him. It's been the biggest key for him his entire career so far. Yep. It seems like every year he kind of steps on a rake and gets hurt. Totally. So, yeah. And I agree. If you can staple him to Michael Backlund, I think that would be a really good spot for him to learn how to be an NHL player. He'll get the Backlund bump, learn how to be the two-way guy. And, we talked about, comparison to like a Blake Coleman. If you can turn into that style of player, the Flames will be really happy. And, I think if you staple in Michael Backlund, that's definitely a potential for the Flames. So I think that's a really good one too. The other guy I'll just quickly throw out there, and once again, I don't know if it's necessarily a breakout candidate, but I look at Morgan Frost as having the opportunity to truly break out and have a career year next year. You take a look at his stats at the end of last season. So from the trade deadline to the end of the year, he put up 14 points in 21 games, and 9 of those were goals. So, that's almost a 40-goal pace, and that's about a 55-point pace over 84 games. Frost hasn't really even come close to doing that. So next season, he's their number one offensive center. He'll be first on the first power play unit. He'll be playing a lot in 3-on-3 overtime. He'll be playing in the shootout. He's going to get all these offensive matchups. He's got all these offensive opportunities. He's probably going to play with Gridden and Coronado, 2 pretty skilled players. This is the year for Morgan Frost to step up and show that he can be a 50 to 60 point centerman in this league. And if it doesn't happen next year, I don't think it ever will. So there is a potential for Frost to be that guy and to break out. And of course, it's the contract year. If there's any year you're going to want to step up and have the best year of your career, it's obviously when you're about to become a UFA, with a rising salary cap. And, a lot of these UFA classes, they're not filled with the most talented players. So if Morgan Frost becomes a UFA next year, coming off a 50 to 60 point season, he's going to cash in big time. So yeah, I could see him having a little bit of a breakout too.
Yeah, I like that. We talked about him a couple podcasts ago and about the opportunity in front of him. If he can seize that and be a player that can be relied on, he's just not some guy you just toss out with the bathwater. He could be a guy to be, like I mentioned, quote unquote, the next Backlund type player, the veteran on your lineup, a bit further down your lineup to help lead the next group of kids. Here's a big opportunity for him. I like that call by you, Robert. I did have one honorable mentions as well, and that's a pretty obvious one as well. Hunter Brstevich has an opportunity to kind of force his way into the NHL again and to supplant Whitecloud as a full-time NHLer. He's probably going to go down to the A to start the season unless he has an unbelievable camp. And he's going to have an opportunity to really force the hand of the Flames, and I think he's poised to do that if he's worked on a few of the things that we've mentioned on the podcast and other shows have mentioned about maybe playing with a little bit more pace to the game and those kind of things. Thinking the game a little quicker might help him achieve those goals. So I think Hunter Brstevich should have a nice honorable mention here as well. He could potentially force the hand of the Flames, and if he does that, that's quite awesome on him and the job that he has done. And I look forward to watching that story because that's going to be a huge story, I think, Robert, as well this year, is Hunter Brstevich for the Flames. However it goes, negative or positive for the player, I think it's going to be a big storyline here, and I think he has the potential here to force the hand of Craig Conroy and Ryan Huska and say, hey, I'm here, you got to play me because I've been that good and undeniable for the Wranglers.
The interesting thing with Brstevich will just be, how is he going to get the opportunity, and is it going to be in the NHL or the AHL? Mm-hmm. Because, as of right now, just looking at the decor, I personally don't see a spot for him to start the season. I think he'd be more suited to go down to the American League and play huge minutes on a top pair. But if he goes down to the American League, and dominates and shows that he's an NHL player, well, then yeah, there is an opportunity for him to get the call up and potentially, you know, move out a guy like Zach Whitecloud and get probably a pretty significant trade return for him. So yeah, that's a really interesting one too.
I can't believe we went through our list here, Robert, and neither of us brought out a breakout for Jonathan Huberdeau. I'm not sure if we're doing this right or not on the podcast.
I don't know if that one's happening.
Awesome. It's going to be exciting how all of these storylines work out going into the training camp, and has training camp and less preseason games works its way through. You use a couple of those early regular season games to help maybe make a couple of choices? Like, does Brstavich get in an early game just to give him a game early? Do you have a guy sit that, you know, maybe Jonathan Huberdeau sits a couple extra days and gives an opportunity to somebody else to maybe have an opportunity to play higher in the lineup? It's going to be interesting how all this works out with the new schedule, the 84 games, and the only, 4 preseason games the Flames are going to have, and a shortened training camp as well for the teams. That's going to be interesting to watch some of these storylines play out for the Flames as we head into the new season.
With only 4 preseason games this year, how do you think the Flames are going to approach that? Because, you know, with 7 or 8 preseason games before, it was guys in the American League and guys who are, you know, in junior, they're going to get long looks, whether it's 4 or 5 games. But now that there's only 4, do you think the Flames would approach it as, okay, we need to get our NHL lineup going for 3 of these nights just to get them ready for the regular season? Or do you think they will still give guys in the American League and in junior an opportunity to kind of make a case for themselves?
Do you remember when Daryl Sutter on his second coaching stint went into his first training camp, and it literally was NHL versus, and then it was other groups. Like, he had just one group of all of his NHL. Sure. I think we're going to see that style of training camp, not just on the Flames, I think around the league, where it's your main 20-ish guys on the NHL roster, plus a few extras who you have hopes that they take the next step to the NHL. So I think we're going to see that style of a training camp from a lot of NHL teams, including the Flames here. And I think what you're going to see is these home games are just going to be almost your NHL guys to try to get them ready to go. I think you have to. Every guy wants a game or two to get their legs underneath them to get going here, and you only have 4 of them to play around with. So if you're a bubble player or you're a junior player, you're probably not going to see a ton of action after the first preseason game. And you're probably going to see a lot more NHL laid into rosters and lineups in those other 3 preseason games. So I think the Daryl Sutter model that we were all like, why is he doing it this way? I think that's going to be the way for most NHL teams moving forward here.
I think so too, and I think it's the smart way to go about things.
I think you have to.
I've talked about it before, but yeah, you have to get your guys going. You have to get your team ready, and I think you need at least, in my opinion, 3 games for these guys, like you said, get their legs under them, get the puck touches, just get them used to playing hockey at a high level again. But I always thought that training camp in the preseason was a terrible place to evaluate players. I always thought that you should choose like who your NHL roster is going to be, and then let players go either back to junior or go to the American Hockey League and prove there in games that actually matter, in games where players are going hard and 100% and not just trying to get hurt like a lot of guys are in the preseason. Go there and prove that you're ready, and then you can get called up from that point. I've always thought that was the way to go about evaluations and training camps. So I'm actually happy to see that. I think that's what's going to end up happening. I mean, some guy would have to have a ridiculous 3 or 4 games to even get considered for the team now. You'd have to have, 2 points per game or something like that to really catch the eye of coaches and all that. So yeah, I overall, I think it's a good thing. And yeah, if guys light it up in the American League for the first month or 2 of the year, then that's the way you get your call up. And how many times have we seen in the 6 to 8 game preseason, guys, play really well and earn their spot on the team, and then just eventually get put back in the American Hockey League or junior after 2 or 3 weeks? Like it happens all the time.
All the time.
Whether it was Hanzik before. Or... Go ahead.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry about that. I think it's a good point by you. I think it's on the junior kids to come in, get a taste, and then go back to junior and know what you have to work on for your AHL level guys, you got your taste, you know what's in front of you. Go, and like you mentioned, go back and be undeniable at the AHL level. Hunter Brzustevich might be a good example of that this season. We've seen it time and time again. You mentioned it there with Honzik. You mentioned it with Andrew Mangiapane, a bunch of guys that make the team at a camp and then end up going back to the AHL. It happens all the time. I prefer this way. Less preseason, less training camp. Let's get to the games here. And if you are undeniable, you're going to get your opportunity. Craig Conroy has proven that. Look at Matt Begridden. Look at Matt Coronado. Those guys went down for a small spell, and they got their opportunities because they were undeniable down in the American Hockey League. So it puts a lot of emphasis on making sure that you're refining your game and you're putting in your time to be undeniable, and then you get rewarded from there. So I quite prefer this method to the old 904 pre-games in your month and a half long training camp.
Yeah, I will not miss those days.
Split squad games suck. They were the worst. Let us move on to a fun conversation and the podcast here, Robert. We've taken some time here, and I'm sure you deliberated as hard as I did. And we're going to kind of name our individual Mount Rushmore Calgary Flames of all time. I love the caveat you put in our notes here about we want to make sure that these are based on their impact when they played for the Flames, because that changed my list just ever so slightly at the end of my list. It changed it, and I'll explain when we get there. But Robert, who's first up on your Mount Rushmore of all-time Calgary Flames?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll probably be speaking on behalf of both of us for this one, but I think clearly the number one choice is number 12, Jarome Iginla. I mean, I think he's the best player in franchise history, no doubt about it. Multiple time 50 goal scorer, Hart Trophy winner, Rocket Richard winner, Team Canada's, like all that kind of stuff. I mean, he was the heart and soul of the Calgary Flames for his, 16 or 17 seasons that he played with the team. Earlier in the month, I posted this stat, and it was point scorers on the Calgary Flames during the 2000s. And it was Jarome Iginla with something crazy like 800 points. The next closest guy behind him was Craig Conroy, and I think he had about 450 less points than Jarome during that decade. Like, it just goes to show that Jarome carried this franchise for such a long time. He was the key figure in the 04 Cup run. And I would even make the argument that Jarome Iginla saved the Calgary Flames franchise. I mean, in the early to mid 2000s there, like, things were bleak in Calgary. The Canadian dollar was super low. The Winnipeg Jets and Quebec Nordique had just moved. Attendance was very low. It looked like it was in like the 10 to 12,000 range each night. The team was wildly unsuccessful, but that 04 run, I truly believe, saved the team. And Jarome was obviously the key cog in that whole run. And I think if it wasn't for that run and wasn't for that excitement that kind of rejuvenated hockey in Calgary, there's definitely a potential that the Flames would have moved. So I just think on the ice, incredibly important. Off the ice, incredibly important with, saving the team, essentially. The charity work he did, like, he was such an amazing leader in the community and all that. His legacy is absolutely phenomenal. So yeah, Jarome Iginla, clearly by far and away the number one member on the Mount Rushmore for the Calgary Flames. Yeah.
You can make a case he should be all four members of the Mount Rushmore of the Calgary Flames, just based on what he's done for this organization, the city, and all that, the whole 9 yards. There's not much I can add to what you just mentioned there. From again, leads the team overall in games played and points and goals and this and that. Like, he is the record book for the Calgary Flames. It's all Jarome Iginla. It's number 12. The jerseys are still all around the dome, and it's a pretty easy choice at number one to put on the list here. I'll go here with number two.
It is a complete.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I just want to say, it is a complete shame that the Flames did not have more success with that guy in this city. Like, there was probably a 3 or 4 year period where I think Jarome was the best player in hockey. Just, he was the complete package where there was goals, playmaking, smarts, defense, fighting, checking, leadership, everything. Even like in Trevor Linden's last game of his career when they went and shook his hand, after the game, Trevor Linden told Jerome McGinley, "You're the best player in the game." Like, the Flames should have had way more success with a guy like Jerome here, and that's just the part that sucks when you have the Iginla conversation about his time in Calgary. Like, he did everything in his power to will this team to win, and he just had little to no support. I mean, he had Kipper behind him, but outside of that, like, there wasn't any support for him, like true elite players to go along with him. And I just always thought that sucked, but it was never Jerome's fault, right? Like he worked his ass off. He did everything he could to win here. It was just, I think management, just didn't live up to expectations for him, unfortunately.
If you're in the mood to make yourself a little bit mad about the Flames for a while, go look at those rosters from 2006 to 2009 and look at what the top 6 was around Jerome McGinley. And it kind of hits Robert's point home to the T here about what was around him, what he was working with, like Steven Ryan Prex and Dean McHammons. And no disrespect to those players or the Tony Amontes and the Todd Bertuzzis and those guys. It's no disrespect to those players. They're just really good middle 6 players masking as your top line guys alongside Jerome. And Jerome covered up so much of the Flames over those times that people thought this Flames team was better than they should have been. And they were. And it was showing time and time again when it got to the playoffs, and nobody could do anything other than Jerome McGinley. The 08 run makes me, or lack of a run, makes me so mad because that was just a waste of a season by the Flames. The 09 was very similar to that as well. And it was just a waste of a guy's career who gave so much to the Flames and so much to the organization. There was no quit in that guy. There was no quit in Jerome at all. And it's a shame the Flames weren't able to do more with him. I'm with you on that one, Robert. You could argue the same for the next guy on my list for my Mount Rushmore, and he is the most winningest goaltender in Flames history. He's got a bunch of goaltending stats for the Flames. He, too, was the backbone of that 04 team, and they probably could have done more with him in goal. He just ekes out Mike Vernon as the best goaltender in the history of the Flames organization. So I put Mika Kiprasov on my Mount Rushmore of all-time Flames. Had to put a goaltender on the list, and he's the one I went with. You go back to his stint was a little shorter than a lot of other people's have in the National Hockey League, but for a time there, he was the best goaltender in the league. The Vezina Trophy proved it. The William Jennings Trophy proved it. The run in 04 helped show it. He was incredible for the Flames, and he holds a lot of records for doing what he did in Calgary. So for me, kind of an easy decision for me is Mika Kiprasov on Mount Rushmore.
He's on mine too. And yeah, for all the reasons you said, I mean, I think he holds the record for every major goaltending stat in Flames history. I think he's part of the 3-headed monster in 04 with Jerome, Mika, and Daryl Sutter as the key drivers of that run, and I think the key drivers of saving the Flames in this city. And I think if Mika Kiprasov was playing in a different market and was playing for a better team, I guarantee you he would have been regarded as either the best or one of the top 3 goalies of his era. But I don't think that people around the NHL outside of Calgary view him in that same light, but he totally was. I mean, like, if it wasn't for Mika Kiprasov, the Flames would have never went to the Stanley Cup final. They probably wouldn't have made the playoffs that year, and they would not have made the playoffs for the next, 4 years after the lockout beyond that. Him and Jerome were just by far and away the 2 best players, and it wasn't even close. And Mika was just a massive reason why that team was, somewhat competitive and made the playoffs for a little bit there. And once again, I wish he did more winning here. I wish the Flames gave him a little bit more help because he was spectacular. He was so good. And like I said, if he's playing on a good team, say he plays on the Ducks in 07, or he's on the Penguins, or he's on the Red Wings, or the Canucks, or Blackhawks, or Bruins, like one of those teams, he goes down as one of the best goalies of his era and probably has a legitimate case to be in the Hall of Fame. But because he played on these Calgary Flames teams that just weren't very good and didn't do any winning, I think he's kind of forgotten around the league. So yeah, I think he deserves to be on the Mount Rushmore for sure.
I'm going to correct something I said earlier. He played 576 games as a member of the Flames, which is the most in franchise history. He has 305 wins, which is clearly the most in Flames history, ahead of the 262 from Mike Vernon. So Mika Kaprizov, an easy addition, much like Jerome is, to the Mount Rushmore of the Calgary Flames. This, I think, is where our list might get a little bit interesting, a little bit different, Robert. Who is your third member of your Mount Rushmore?
I would go with Al MacInnis. And, I think he's clearly the best defenseman in franchise history. Like a true NHL all-star. I mean, if we're to compare like where MacInnis was in the late 80s and early 90s to a defenseman today, I think he'd be in that Cale Makar, Quinn Hughes, Rasmus Dahlin type of conversation. Like 100%. I think he was one of the best defensemen of his era, put up a ton of points, was a good defensive player, had the booming shot, like crazy slap shot. I love that one highlight of him playing against the Kings where he takes the one-timer and almost takes off Kelly Rudy's head. Then the glass breaks behind him. You're like, oh my God, this guy can shoot the puck. It's like Happy Gilmore. And then, of course, the most important thing in this franchise is the 1989 Stanley Cup. And, he won the Conn Smythe Trophy that year. He was the driver on the blue line, to that Stanley Cup victory for the 1989 team. And, because of that, I think he clearly deserves to be on the Mount Rushmore. And, if we were to rank like the greatest players of all time who had the biggest impact, you could make an argument that Al MacInnis could be number 2 on that list. So, yeah, he's on my Mount Rushmore for sure.
I'm a little surprised he made it because of the generational thing, but I'm glad greatness doesn't surpass Robert. He's also on my Mount Rushmore. He, for me, outside Jerome, is the best Flame of all time. He is the guy who led that 89 team. He won the Conn Smythe for a reason. He was more than just the slap shot, even though it was a huge part of his game. It was a weapon. Remember, kids, he did that with a wood stick, not these new lightweight sticks. He was doing that with an oak tree in his hand. Like, he was incredible. And the thing that I really liked about watching Al MacInnis's game is the way that he positioned himself to be successful at both ends of the ice. You go back to the Olympics in 2002 and the role that he played for Team Canada, it shows it quite well as well. He's just this incredible guy who was positionally sound. He used his stick at both ends of the ice. He could score. He could skate with the best of them. And there was a reason he was a captain in St. Louis. There's a reason he won the Conn Smythe in Calgary when they won the Stanley Cup. For me, Al MacInnis is a guy who's not talked about enough when it comes to Flames lore and NHL lore. He is a guy who deserves every accolade thrown his way. 822 points in 803 games as a member of the Flames. Third all-time behind Jess Fleury and Ginla for that honor. He was absolutely incredible, man. And what makes him even better is he's just a great human as well. And he continually shows that as he works in the St. Louis Blues organization at the moment. So like that Al MacInnis gets the recognition.
His jersey.
Yeah, put 2 in the rafters.
Thank you. His jersey needs to be retired. It's crazy that it is not retired
criminal.
in the city, and it is criminal. And I think the Flames will do him right when Scotia Place opens. I have this feeling that the Forever a Flame program is going to go away, and they should retire both Nieuwendyk and MacInnis's number. But yeah, like for him to be a Forever a Flame, like, are you kidding me? Like that's crazy. So yeah, couldn't agree more.
I hate that Forever Flame thing. That's the dumbest thing. Like, if you want to do a Ring of Honor thing like they do in the National Football League, go ahead and do that, but don't make it like you did. It was awfully done. 2 deserves to be in the rafters. The last member of the Mount Rushmore here, and this is why I mentioned your caveat off the top, because for me, it would have been easy to put Lanny McDonald on this Mount Rushmore for what he did on the ice and then off the ice, and as an ambassador of the team now with the alumni, and everything that he incorporates puts him in that category for me. It also would be easy to put a guy like Theoren Fleury on this list, but I went with a player, and people are going to call this recency biased, but he was on projection to break a lot of Iginla's records, and unfortunately he chose to sign elsewhere. But I still put Johnny Gaudreau as an important member of the Flames for the time that he was in Calgary. All 602 games that he played, with 609 points were very valuable to the Flames. He put a little bit of injection into this organization after they traded Iginla away. He carried that team on his back for a couple of seasons, including some playoff wins. Game 7 versus Dallas comes to mind when you talk about Johnny Gaudreau. And so for me, because of the importance he was to this newest generation of Flame fans and what happened after Jerome McGinley, I think he deserves to be in this conversation as well. So I wrestled with my decision between Gaudreau, Fleury, and McDonald, and I put Gaudreau as my fourth member of Mount Rushmore. Robert, where did you go with your final member?
I went with Lanny McDonald. And
love it. I love it.
I think it's a little bit of, I think it's a little bit of what you said, though. It's a mix of both on and off the ice. I mean, on the ice, basically from the day he arrived until probably like the 1988 season, he was a dominant force for this team, and he was a fantastic leader. He was a great player, great goal scorer. And then, of course, he does end up winning the Stanley Cup with the team. He scores probably the most iconic goal in franchise history, Game 6 at the Montreal Forum to put the Flames up 3-1 and kind of put that game away for the team. Really, really love Lanny. And then there's also just like the off ice aspect too, where he's been basically the face of the franchise ever since that he arrived in Calgary. And that's both during his time as a Flame and then both after he retired. Like, he's just done such a good job in the community, representing the team around the league, whether it's at drafts or whether it's in the business suite or whether it's in the community doing charity events, being one of the main leaders on the team that won the Stanley Cup and being in the Hockey Hall of Fame and all that kind of stuff. I mean, like, I just think you add all of that up, and I think he is one of the 4 most important figures in the organization's history. So, yeah, I would go Lanny. And I was right there with you. I mean, you could make arguments for Theo, Johnny, Mark Giordano, Joe Nieuwendyk, those types of players, Mike Vernon. You can make legitimate arguments to be the number 4 on this list. But yeah, I just went with McDonald just because of what he means to the city. And his role in 1989 and his role off the ice after that too. So yeah, I would go him.
That was my toughest wrestle, was between McDonald and Gaudreau because of what Lanny meant to the Flames and what he continually means to the Flames. In the 80s, he was the Flames. He really had an impact on that generation of hockey player, those fans that were able to watch him play. I only vaguely remember watching him play. I was 5 when the Flames won the Stanley Cup, so I barely remember anything about Lanny McDonald's playing career. But post-career, the guy has been everywhere in the community. He shows up everywhere for the Hockey Hall of Fame, for the alumni, for any charity event you want. He's there. Like, that's what makes him so great and makes him a good pick for the Mount Rushmore of Calgary Flames. And that mustache is iconic as well around hockey circles. So I love it very, very much. Robert, who was the toughest cut off your Mount Rushmore list?
It was probably Joe Nieuwendyk. And it just for like I said before, I just think the most important milestone and the most important thing to ever happen in this franchise history was winning the Stanley Cup. And Joe Nieuwendyk was the number 1 center on that team and it played a huge role in bringing a Stanley Cup to Calgary and, turned into one hell of a forward, and then the funny thing about Nieuwendyk, and I don't know if this counts or not towards, how we go about these rankings, but he also turned into Jerome McGinley when it comes to the trade. So it's like, not only did you get 7 or 8 fantastic years out of Joe Nieuwendyk, the only true legitimate number 1 center in franchise history, but you also turned him into Jerome, who ended up becoming the greatest player in franchise history. So that's kind of like a fun way to look at it. But, Johnny was right there too. And you make a really good point about, after the Jerome McGinley era, it was dark. Like, things were very bleak here in Calgary. From 2010 until the day they traded Jerome, they were not a good team. They were hanging on for dear life, barely missing the playoffs. And it was kind of a sad era. And then you trade Jerome, and then it's like, then you literally have nothing. And then, thank God, Jay Feaster and John Weisbrod drafted Johnny Gaudreau because, like you said, he came in as a rookie and completely turned around the fortunes of the franchise. And he's by far and away the most entertaining player to watch during that era. One of the true stars in the NHL, one of the more marketable faces. And just every single game, he just made unbelievable plays. Like he was worth watching the game just to see Johnny Gaudreau. So yeah, I totally agree. And had he stayed with the Flames longer, or had he had more playoff success, I think that he would have been a slam dunk to be on this list. But just because he left the team, the way he did, and to have the limited playoff success that the team did during his era on the team, that's kind of the reason why I left him off the board. But he was definitely right there, and I like that pick by you.
Yeah, that's fair. The hardest guy for me to leave off the list was Theo Fleury, and I think Theo is getting a lot of disservice in the media and social media for his beliefs nowadays, his political, however you want to word that side of Theo out. But the hockey player wise, when you watch Theoren Fleury play, he played during an awful era as well. He was part of that Young Guns era. He was part of the post 89 team, when they won everything. He's able to win that Stanley Cup with the team. And then he had the team put on his shoulders for a lot of years as, hey, here's this small little dude who runs around like a big ball of hate. And if you were lucky enough to grow up watching that era of Flames hockey, with those nice pedestal jerseys that they were wearing back then, and you watch Theoren Fleury with that flaming C logo as the captain C as well on that jersey, you loved what he did for the Flames. You loved what he provided for the Flames, the spark plug that he was. He was kind of like a Brad Marchand before Brad Marchand was around. Like, he did everything for the Flames back then. So for me, he was the toughest let off. It was kind of a nostalgic guy for me as well. Grew up watching those teams. And that's how I became a Flames fan, is watching those teams. So for me, Theo Fleury was the toughest let off. He's second in the team's history for scoring. He's on that list, and everyone seems to forget that when they talk about the Flames and their allure and the history of this team. Theoren Fleury, say what you want about his political side, but hockey-wise, he was a huge part of the Flames for a long time. And there's a reason why he was the second all-time in points by a Flame currently. So for me, Theo Fleury was my hardest guy to leave off the list, Robert.
Yeah, also part of the 1989 Stanley Cup team, which I think is absolutely huge.
He was so good. Once
again, though, like when he was the guy in Calgary, they didn't really have much success at all. Like, I don't know if Fleury ever made it out of the first round outside of 1989. So, like, that might be one of the reasons why I think I had him off. But I mean, once again, how much of that is his fault? They ended up trading away all the big time players from 1989, and then Fleury was basically by himself for a number of years, and like you said, into the Young Guns era there. So yeah, that one's tough. He's right on the edge for me too. He's got the records in terms of second in points and in goals and all that kind of stuff, but yeah, I think he just barely misses, and I think the Mount Rushmore I have, and I think that you have, is pretty solid, but he's right on the edge there. He's very close to being in the mix.
Yeah, and you're spot on there, Robert. I just went and looked. The only time he made it past the second round after 89 was when he played for the Avalanche in 99. So not much playoff success for Theoren Fleury in Calgary after the Cup win. Anything else you wanted to bring up on the show this week here, Robert, or are we good to wrap this bad boy up as we hit the hour mark?
No, that was a fun episode, and we should do more of these, like, kind of Mount Rushmore style rankings. I think that would be fun for the next couple episodes here in the summer. But no, that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that.
Next week on the pod, Robert gets his anti Mount Rushmore, his 4 worst Flames. Just kidding. That would be hilarious. Thank you so much, as always, for making us a part of your podcast rotation. We have surpassed a giant number again for the 5th week in a row. And Robert and I are both blown away by the reception of the podcast. So even if the Flames get some sports media back, please don't forget about us, because we genuinely enjoy talking Flames with all of you. You can find Robert with @Robert_Munich on Twitter. I am @VintageJohnny84. And of course, the show Red Mile Rundown, wherever you get your content and doing your social media. We appreciate you. We will see you next week here on the Red Mile Rundown.